Hey guys, imagine waking up to a text from a stranger that reads, "I think we met in a previous life. Your coffee mug is the only thing that survived." Before we dive into this twisted love tale, smash that like button if you love a good fate fuckery, and drop a comment telling us the craziest coincidence you've ever survived. We'll read them all and probably cry a little. Now, dim the lights, grab a comfy blanket, and let the faint scent of burnt espresso and old rain-soaked books wash over you like a nostalgic ghost. You find yourself perched on a cracked wooden stool in a downtown bistro, the jukebox humming a mournful sax, while the waitress flicks a half smile that could hide a secret algorithm. As the clock ticks, your heart does that ridiculous flutter like a butterfly on a roller coaster rhythm, and you can't help but wonder, is this just a coincidence, or has fate finally decided to binge watch your love life like a terrible reality show? Let us know in the comments if you think destiny needs a better script. And stay tuned, because the twist coming up will change everything. In the heart of Ethera, where the air pulsed with the symphony of haggling vendors, and the sense of fried dough mingled with the tang of fresh spices, the marketplace flourished like a vibrant tapestry. Stalls burst with color, vivid fabrics fluttered like birds released from their cages, and fruits overflowed in hues so bright one might think the gods themselves had spilled their paint. Among the throngs of eager shoppers and raucous street performers, Alara moved with a carefree grace, her laughter spilling into the bustling streets like sunlight breaking through the clouds. Yet, as her emerald eyes wandered from one stall to another, they landed upon Thalion, an unassuming artist with paint-stained fingers and dreams that stretched far beyond his meager existence. The moment held an electric spark, as if the universe had pressed pause, waiting for the magic to unfold. Thalion, absorbed in his craft, barely registered the world outside his canvas, until that fateful moment when Alara's enchanting presence broke through his artistic reverie. The crowd buzzed around him, a chaotic orchestra of life, but when their eyes locked, his heart raced as if it were auditioning for a lead role in a tragic love tale. Her smile, exquisite and inviting, shone brighter than the golden sun hung over Ethera's rooftops. Yet fate, ever the trickster, had its whims. The vibrant hues of romance danced in the air like fireflies, only to be shadowed by the grumbling storm clouds of impending uncertainty. Little did they know, their newfound connection was but the fragile whisper of a love story that would face trials no epic hero could ever prepare for. As Alara approached, the intoxicating melange of roasted lamb and candied almonds swirled around them, enhancing the thrill of the moment. There was an irony in how an artist, often lost in paint and canvas, suddenly felt as though he were experiencing the most exquisite masterpiece of all love at first sight. The awkwardness of their initial stuttering conversation felt like an endearing prologue to what might bloom between them, each word a stroke on a blank canvas. If Shakespeare had been lurking in a corner, he would have chuckled, for clearly these two were about to pen their own romantic comedy complete with the slapstick rhythm of youthful infatuation and misunderstandings. However, a distant storm brewed, threatening to upend their whimsical daydreams, lurking like a villain in an obscure sequel, but true to the nature of fate. Just as they were getting lost in each other's laughter, the winds shifted ominously. An unexpected ruckus at the far end of the marketplace drew attention like a bee to honey. And suddenly, a hulking figure burst into view. It was a local nobleman, notorious for his disdainful arrogance and penchant for chaos, declaring his disdain for anything that did not bend to his whims. Thalion's heart sank, for the nobleman had a penchant for snatching the fortunes and dreams of those like him, leaving them in shadows cast by wealth and privilege. In that moment, the ethereal bubble surrounding Alara and Thalion threatened to burst, as if an invisible hand had drawn a stark line in the sand between the elegance of love and the brutality of reality. Yet fate's plot twisted tighter that day, as Alara caught wind of the nobleman's advances toward her. A suggestion for a lavish feast at his estate loomed ahead, promising prestige, but threatening to sever the delicate tie they'd just begun to weave. A flurry of emotions collided. A mix of fear and excitement crept up Thalion's spine like chilled winter air. Would she choose the gilded cage of the nobleman's lifestyle, or dare to explore the uncharted territory of a passionate romance with an artist struggling for recognition? Beneath the lively chatter and playful bickering of the market, the cogs of destiny began to turn, setting in motion a love story intertwined with choices, consequences, and the undeniable thrill of the unknown. And as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the bustling stalls, both lovers felt the weight of what lay ahead. Each step at the crossroads could lead to heartbreak or bliss, and only time would reveal which path destiny had planned for them. In the sun-drenched gardens of Ethera, where the vibrant hues of flowering jasmine danced in the gentle breeze, Alara and Thalion found their fledgling romance blossoming like the blossoms around them. Each shared glance ignited sparks that crackled in the air, their laughter mingling with the sweet melodies of singing birds, a symphony of love. Sprawled beneath the famously ancient oak tree, they exchanged playful banter, the kind that made you feel giddy, as innocent as a toddler's first crush. Little did they know the undercurrents of danger slithered through the petals of this idyllic scene, like a lurking shadow in a sunlit fairy tale. In a world unfurling before them, darkness brewed, waiting to pounce at the slightest sign of weakness in their radiant connection. But lurking just beyond the garden's fragrant embrace was Lord Arion, the wealthiest merchant in Ethera, whose heart burned with a fire as bitter as burnt sugar. He watched with narrowed eyes, drawing dark lines in the sand, as Alara and Thalion reveled in their blissful ignorance, with gold coins that jingled like a malevolent chorus. Arion plotted his treachery, his mind turning faster than a wheel on a runaway cart. Having eyed Alara's beauty and spirit, he harbored a selfish desire, a yearning that was as unquenchable as a dragon's lust for gold. He wanted her for himself, and with his arsenal of wealth and influence, he was ready to unleash chaos, to feast on the innocence of love. With a flick of his wrist, Lord Arion unleashed his insidious plan like a villain, with too much time on their hands in a Saturday morning cartoon. Word drifted through the cobbled streets of Ethera, whispers as soft as the rustle of leaves, but sharp enough to cut through the trust between lovers. Did you hear? Thalion was seen lurking outside the tavern in the dead of night, engaging in shifty dealings with mysterious figures. As the murmurs swirled like autumn leaves in a tempest, Alara, who painted her world with colors of hope, felt the first hints of doubt creep into her heart like a thief in the night. She began to question all the sweet promises whispered in the moonlit glades, wondering if she had been blind to the corruption poisoning her love. Thalion, oblivious to the storm breaching their paradise, continued to bask in his affection for Alara, unaware of the machinations lurking in the dark corners of their lives. The sweet cadence of their conversations began to dim, replaced by an unease that thrummed like a restless spirit. He would often catch Alara's gaze drifting, a cloud of uncertainty overshadowing their sunlit moments. One fateful afternoon, thunderous clouds rolled in with an ominous intention, mirroring Alara's turmoil as she confronted Thalion about the whispers, her voice quaking like a distant drum. The air grew thick between them, heavy with the weight of deception, each word tinged with emotions so raw it felt like raw onions were being chopped at the heart of their bond. In that moment, as lightning split the sky, Thalion understood that love was not merely an adventure with soft glances and hand-holding at sunset. It was a battlefield, a thrilling quest that demanded courage and faith amidst deceit. The irony snaked through him like an arrow shot from an unseen bow, that the very thing he cherished, his love for Alara, was now a pawn in a cruel game played by a man cloaked in greed. With a voice as fierce as a summer storm, Thalion vowed to peel back the layers of lies that threatened to ensnare them. Underneath, a sky bruised and aflame, he promised not just to love her, but to fight for the truth, igniting a spark of rebellion that could very well illuminate their path back toward each other. As the twilight settled like a heavy cloak across the kingdom, Alara stood on the cusp of an emotional tempest. Her heart, a fragile glass ornament in a room full of children with marbles. The confrontation with Thalion had erupted like a volcano, spewing forth misunderstandings that Lord Arian had orchestrated with the finesse of a magician pulling rabbits from hats. The echoes of their harsh words danced in Alara's ears, a chilling reminder of the rift that now loomed between them. Her breath came in sharp bursts, each inhalation pungent with the earthy scent of damp soil, a stark contrast to the bitterness in her heart. Drenched in tears and confusion, the world around her faded, leaving only the raw truth of her yearning for Thalion amid the backdrop of an impending storm. Thalion, too, found himself swept away by the currents of sorrow and betrayal, like a hapless sailor adrift at sea. Beneath the moonlight that filtered through the clouds, he paced in the shadows, fists clenched and jaw set, the rich aroma of pine chasing away the lingering scent of their last exchange. Each step echoed a painful truth. His love for Alara had been unshackled, but now seemed to flutter away like an untrained bird. With every heartbeat, he felt the weight of Lord Arian's sinister games pressing down upon him, igniting a determination to seek the truth that burned brighter than a dragon's breath. It was a quest not just for understanding, but a desperate search for redemption. A spark that could reignite their love before it burned to ashes. Thus began their parallel journeys, two parallel lines gearing up to intersect again, like stars that twinkle in the vast expanse of the night sky. Alara ventured through murky woods and across sun-dappled meadows, each step taken with the grace of a dancer, despite the entangling roots that snatched at her skirts like jealous hands. She sought the whispers of the wind, tales of deceit that painted their hearts in shades of gray, the sweet scents of blooming wildflowers mingling enticingly with the bitter aftertaste of betrayal. Meanwhile, Thalion navigated the labyrinth of the court, where intrigue wrapped around him like a deceitful cloak. The scent of perfumed nobles thick in the air, suffocating yet alluring. The world around them pulsed with the thrill of discovery, both acutely aware that fate, with her wretched grin, had spun their tale into knots that only truth could unravel. As the layers of deception unfurled, both Alara and Thalion stumbled upon Arian's insidious plots, each revelation landing like a well-aimed blow, forcing them to confront not just the world, but each other. The irony was bitter. like old wine gone sour. They had been so busy fighting their own dragons that they hadn't noticed the true beast lurking in the shadows. In the echoing silence that surrounded them, they could almost hear Arian's laughter, an annoying sound, like nails on a chalkboard, reminding them of the puppet master pulling their strings. Yet with every truth uncovered, they found fragments of hope, glimmers of who they once were together, memories of laughter shared over games of chance and late-night talks that stretched until dawn. It became evident their love had always been a test, one that fate had designed with cruelty, yet laced with unexpected beauty. And so, armed with newfound knowledge and resilience forged in the fires of adversity, Alara and Thalion resolved to reclaim their love, to mend the fabric of their hearts that Arian had so ruthlessly torn. They would face the storm together, no longer confined to their solitary paths, but intertwined like ivy embracing the mighty oak. The scent of rain hung heavy in the air as they danced once more toward each other, laughter bubbling forth like a cauldron of joy, the sweet tang of promise drowning out the bitterness of their trials. With every heartbeat synchronized, they crossed the threshold of misunderstanding, ready to turn the page on a story still being written. Fate had played tricks indeed, but love would prove to be the most cunning of all, a force to outsmart even the most treacherous of intentions. The sun loomed high over the bustling town square of Ethera, its glaring rays illuminating the colorful stalls laden with craft wares, and tempting aromas wafting from food carts. Children scampered about, their laughter mingling with the sound of musicians plucking heartstrings on lively lutes, while townsfolk clapped along in time. Yet, amidst this festive atmosphere flourished an undercurrent of tension, palpable as the heat. Alara, her heart pounding like a war drum, locked eyes with Thalion as they both prepared to face the storm brewing before them. A showdown they couldn't avoid any longer. Lord Arian, draped in flamboyant silks that shimmered like a peacock's tail, stood atop a makeshift podium, his presence oppressing the airy joy of the festival. With a handcrafted crown that looked suspiciously like it had been pilfered from a cereal box, he smirked at the crowd, the very essence of aristocratic arrogance. But today, that smirk would meet a challenge. As Alara stepped forward, her feet almost dragging with gravity, she summoned every ounce of courage. She was not just a simple village girl, but a fierce force of love, ready to unravel his web of deceit. The air cracked with energy as Alara proclaimed Arian's treachery, her voice a clarion call that sliced through the chatter and revelry. Townsfolk paused, their laughter dying down, faces torn between disbelief and curiosity, as whispers began to churn like a whirlwind. Thalion stood beside her, his presence a solid shield, adding fire to her bravery. Together, they unveiled the truth about Arian's dark dealings, how his charming facade hid a schemer so despicable that even the rats would turn their noses up at him. It felt like that moment in a reality show when the heartthrob gets outed for colluding behind the scenes, complete with gasps from the audience. Just when it seemed the truth could pierce through Arian's defenses, his face twisted into a cruel frown, like a spoiled cat toyed with before the final blow. With a snarl that could curdle milk, he spat venomous retorts, trying to ensnare them in doubts. But the crowd stood resolute, emboldened by Alara and Thalion's unyielding resolve. The scent of sweat mixed with disbelief filled the air as people shuffled closer, drawn in like moths to a flame. Thalion lifted his chin, determination sparkling in his eyes, sending a wild thrill through Alara's heart. They were in this together, facing the beast with nothing but love and boldness. As the clash of hearts reached its zenith, thunderous applause erupted when Arian finally faltered, his smug front crumbling like an overcooked pastry. Alara and Thalion's hands intertwined, underscoring their united front, a display of sheer audacity amid chaos, with the town of Ethera witnessing the night turn euphoric. The couple had not just fought for their love. They had ignited a revolution of truth that hummed through the air, rendering Arian an outcast amidst the thrumming heartbeats of the community. The festival that began as a mere celebration transformed into a testament of courage, a reminder that sometimes fate brings together mismatched hearts to forge a love that could outrun any darkness. The air crackled with the remnants of magic and tension as Alara and Thalion emerged from the shadowy depths of victory. Their hearts raced, not just from the adrenaline of the confrontation, but from the sheer elation of love that had flourished amidst chaos. It was as if the town itself exhaled a collective breath, a sound like rustling leaves, echoing the newfound freedom from the grasp of the tyrant, Lord Arian. The townsfolk gathered, faces painted with excitement, interspersed with the laughter of children who had just discovered their own heroics. After all, Lord Arian's plots had been unraveled like a poorly knit sweater. Who knew the fate of a kingdom could hinge so precariously on a bunch of misfit heroes? And one very brave bardfish named Frederick. Such was life in a town that smelled of fresh rain and sweet baked bread, filled with a camaraderie that was practically palpable, like a shared blanket on a chilly night. As Alara caught Thalion's eye in the golden light of the fading day, the world around them began to blur into a picturesque canvas, each stroke rich with pastels and promise. They exchanged knowing smiles, the kind that whispered secrets of late-night adventures and future dreams waiting to be written on the scroll of life. With each step forward, they felt the weight of adversity lift, like the way socks slip off after a long day of chasing down rogue chickens and discussing grand philosophies. Their laughter bubbled up, light and carefree, rippling through the crowd, stirring up happiness like the sound of old jazz music wafting from a tavern on a warm summer evening, mingling scents of wood smoke and honey mead. Yes, indeed, their story was one of rediscovery, rich enough to deserve its own ballad, something to rival even the tales of the mighty sea captains of yore. Through the heart of the town they strode, hand in hand, leaving behind the wreckage of Arian's once mighty reign, much like a twisted branch, snapped and discarded. The whispers of the people swirled around them, a joyous cacophony, each voice a quill penning tales of how love had triumphed over treachery. Elara caught snippets of their gossip, some of it downright ludicrous, about how Thalion had befriended a particularly stubborn goat in their battle. We all know goats are a force of nature. It turned out their adventure wasn't just about saving the town, but revealed a deeper truth. That love, in its purest form, was the most potent magic of all, as intoxicating as the finest wine, and just as full of surprises. And boy, did they have plans. Together, their imaginations became a whirlpool of colors and dreams, building castles not just of stone, but of laughter and each other's wildest hopes, with the horizon aglow like a spilled treasure chest of gold. Elara and Thalion found themselves at the edge of the familiar forest, that tangled thicket where their lives had first intertwined. The trees whispered secrets in the breeze, and the earthy scent of damp soil filled the air, mingling with the sweetness of blooming wildflowers. Ah, the road ahead is our blank canvas, Thalion exclaimed, guiding Elara to a small rise, a vantage point where they could envision their adventures. With the sun dripping into the horizon like molten amber, they began brainstorming their grand journey. They would traverse the ancient lands, dance through festivals, engage in reckless debates over mythical creatures, and pen their saga, letting fate weave them the tapestry of the unforeseen. Because if one thing was true, it was that every hero, even the dim-witted ones, deserved to write their own love story from the ashes of conflict. It was a little like crafting a comic book. You just needed the right plot twists and a dashing hero, not to discount a heroine who could probably outsmart the queen of wits herself. As they set forth into the twilight, a sense of purpose wrapped around them like a warm, snug cloak, their laughter trailing behind like fairy dust in the air. Elara's heart swelled, both with love and the newfound strength of a formidable bond. bursting with excitement for the adventures that awaited. With each step, she could almost hear the joyful whispers of the townsfolk behind them, now fully on board the love train of support, perhaps even imagining their futures in gossip-laden stories filled with irony. Lord Arian may have thought he held the strings of fate, pulling them taut and trying to ruin everything. But little did he know that real magic thrived in genuine connections and heartfelt dreams. And so they walked, two souls intertwined, ready to rewrite their love story, one laugh, one adventure, and one heroic goat at a time. In the heart of a kingdom carved by war and treachery, Alara, the radiant daughter of a powerful duke, found herself slipping away from her gilded cage. The air was thick with the aroma of damp earth and the distant echo of clashing swords. But in this hidden glen, a different kind of battle brewed. The sun peeked through thick green leaves, dappled light dancing around her, casting an ethereal glow that made her feel as if she belonged to a treasure map, one that only the brave dared to follow. Her heart raced like a heroine in a tale written by shifty bards, for she knew that straying from the path so often tread by noblewomen was a risk that could lead to both thrilling adventures and perilous consequences. And yet, the pull of this forbidden place was irresistible. A siren's song that called her deeper into the embrace of the unknown. Then, amidst the woven fables of her imagination, a figure emerged from the brush, a commoner named Kale. His attire, a modest tapestry, woven of rough linen and unfurling tendrils of wild grass. His dark hair framed a face that held the mystery of twilight, and their eyes locked like two stars colliding against the vastness of the universe. The world around them faded into a hazy backdrop, the clamor of the kingdom's turmoil vanishing, as if submerged in a spell of enchantment. Alara felt the prickling awareness of her heartbeat echoing in her chest, as if her very spirit was singing a duet with the mysterious stranger. It was the kind of moment typically bestowed upon unlikely protagonists in soppy romance novels, replete with sparkly-eyed declarations and swooning embraces. Yet instead, they were faced with the weight of societal expectations and the cruel irony of their different worlds. In the vibrant tapestry of the glen, the dingy realities of their disparate lives hung like an oppressive fog. As the laughter of Alara bubbled up, a bittersweet undertone accompanied it, for she knew the reality was a pot of boiling tension, simmering just beyond the treetops. With every shared glance and shy smile, the gnawing truth danced in the corners of their minds. A noblewoman should never fall for a lowly commoner, just as a chicken shouldn't try to win the heart of a hawk. Yet here they were, lost in whispers veiled by leaves and the rustling promises of forbidden dreams. So, They exchanged stories under the woven canopy, the spark of their burgeoning affections lighting the darker corners of a kingdom, fraught with war drums and scheming nobles. But fate, as mischievous as a cat chasing its own tail, wasn't done toying with their destinies. News of unrest spread like wildfire, igniting passions that sometimes sparked into flames bright enough to engulf the very fabric of their fragile romance, as political tensions spiraled towards a cliffhanger moment reminiscent of a nail-biting series finale. Alara and Kale found themselves torn between their undeniable connection and the characters each had to play in a cruel game orchestrated by their rulers. The air crackled, thick with the noise of swords clashing and the distant cries of the oppressed, as if the very land beneath their feet was caught in a feverish grip of rebellion and heartache. Every heartbeat seemed to echo the question, could their love withstand the tempest brewing just beyond the glen? Or were they bound to become mere footnotes in a dark chapter of history? With every tentative meeting, the stakes grew higher, and the whispers of destiny surrounded them like fireflies in the dusk, flickering in and out of the shadows. Alara caught whiffs of wild jasmine, its sweetness tangled with the earthy scent of the rugged ground beneath their feet, a potent reminder that beauty persisted even in chaos. And while the world beyond the glen threatened to rip asunder what they had started to build, the heart's language often speaks louder than the chorus of swords and politics. Kale's laughter, warm and genuine, stood in stark contrast to the grim news from the castle. And for a moment, just a fleeting moment, the kingdom felt as if it could be rewritten by the pen of love. Yet looming behind them, as ever, was the harsh reality that love, like a well-crafted plot twist, often comes with its own set of heartbreaks and ironies, ready to flip the script when least expected. In the flickering candlelight of the old stone ruin, hidden deep within the forest, Alara and Kale shared whispered secrets that danced on the cool night air. Each letter they exchanged was infused with longing, her delicate script blooming across the parchment like wildflowers in spring, bursting with stolen dreams and hopes. Outside, the wind howled like a melancholy wolf, reminding them of the perilous game they played, while inside, the warmth of their connection pushed back the chill of the world outside. Their hearts raced like wild stallions, knowing that the shadows of Alara's father, his brooding presence, and iron-fisted commands hovered just beyond the edges of their sanctuary, ready to pounce should their secret be exposed. But in that moment, surrounded by nature's whispering peace, it felt like they were the only two souls in all of existence, cocooned in a sweet bubble of rebellion and reckless love. The looming specter of her arranged marriage hovered over Alara like an ominous storm cloud, darkening her every waking thought. Her father, notorious as both a warlord and a master planner, had allied with a powerful duke who was more interested in winning lands than hearts. To him, Alara was merely a pawn, an exquisite trophy meant to strengthen his grip on power. As she prepared for a future filled with political games and cold facades, she could almost hear the clinking of goblets and taste the bitterness of betrayal every time her father spoke of the noble match. If only he could see that the true battle raged not on distant fields, but within the walls of their own home, where her heart yearned for Kale's fiery spirit instead of the lifeless alliance destined to consume her soul. Concealing her love felt like spinning a web of deceit with threads of joy and dread. Each encounter with Kale was a risk, a delicious thrill that sent adrenaline coursing through her veins like an electrifying potion. They would meet beneath the ancient oak, where the air thrummed with the rustle of leaves, whispering secrets in a language only the two of them understood. The scent of earth and damp wood mingled with the sweet, fragrant perfume of wild blossoms, which made their stolen moments feel as if they were outside the bounds of time itself. But the clock ticked on relentlessly, a mocking reminder that every heartbeat could be their last in such a forbidden dance. And yet, even amidst the brewing storm, there was a dangerous joy in the risk, a temptation that made her heart flutter like a bird caught between the desire to soar and the instinct to hide. As days turned to weeks, Alara found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotion, teetering on the precarious edge of loyalty to family and her secret yearning for Kale. With each passing letter, her heart drummed out a wild rhythm, clashing with the heavy thump of her father's demands for obedience. Entering the great hall surrounded by boisterous laughter, and the clattering of feasting dishes felt like stepping into a feast of suffocating expectations. The sound of her father's confident baritone voice echoed in her ears, each word tinged with the iron grip of authority, promising a future that felt more like a sentence than a blessing. And as she nodded along to the plans laid before her, the weight of responsibility pressed down like a boulder, squeezing out the faint glimmer of hope that still flickered in her chest like a fragile flame, desperate to survive. Forged in the fire of love's rebellion, Alara's resolve began to harden like steel, ignited by moments shared with Kale that felt flickeringly ephemeral, yet infinitely precious. She often wandered back to the memory of their last meeting, the way his laughter rang like a sweet melody against her worries, lifting her spirit even as the shadows began to close in. Each stolen kiss tasted of honey and defiance, a reminder that love, even if forbidden, held the power to shatter empires and transform destinies. With each passing day, the choice that loomed ahead grew clearer. A crossroad between duty and desire, between the heavy chain of expectation and the soaring freedom of love. As the distant thrum of drums signaled the approach of a tumultuous storm, a betrothal feast, no doubt Alara realized that some secrets, when forged in the heart, could alter the very course of history itself. As the sun dipped behind the jagged mountains, casting elongated shadows over the cobblestone streets of Eldoria, a palpable tension hung in the air. The impending betrothal of Princess Alara to Lord Cedric, a suitor more interested in her father's throne than her heart, sent ripples of discontent through the kingdom. Whispers bounced off the stone walls of taverns, echoing like the gossip of 1,000 clucking hens. As citizens debated the impending nuptials over stale bread and watered-down ale, rumors of betrayal surfaced, not just among the nobility, but amongst the common folk. As the brewing storm of discord felt more like a full-blown tempest. Could loyalty to their beloved princess drown in the murky waters of courtly ambition? Was this a kingdom led by a united front, or merely a fragile facade waiting for a crack to split it apart? It was clear something had to give, and soon, in the shadows of the market town, where the scent of ripe fruits mingled with the unlovely odor of refuse, a man named Cale, once a promising knight, now a rebel in heart, paced back and forth, crumpling a letter addressed to Alara in his clammy hand. His heart raced like a horse on the run, as plans of rebellion began to take shape within the depths of his troubled mind. He envisioned a fire in the belly of the disenfranchised, the workers, the farmers, and all those who toiled endlessly to fill the coffers of those who wouldn't even think to share a meal with them. With each hushed word that passed his lips, he felt his resolve solidifying. Their freedom was a weighty cause, perhaps even more seductive than the wildest romantic encounter. The imagery of their uprising bore the tenacity of 1,000,000 wildflowers breaking through cracked pavements in the spring, bold and beautiful against insurmountable odds. Cale chuckled darkly at the thought, fully aware that the odds were stacked against them like a game of Jenga played by clumsy giants. Meanwhile, inside the grand castle, where the opulence cast a blinding gleam over the drab lives below, Alara found herself dressed in layers of silk and lace, as if being wrapped up like a holiday gift no one asked for. Her chambers were perfumed with the heady scent of jasmine, a constant reminder of her charm and beauty. Yet all it did was suffocate her spirit. As she brushed against the embroidered gowns, needles pricked her skin like the worries gnawing at her heart. Duty threatened to consume her, smothering her love for Cale like a pillow on a restless night. Every passing day drew her closer to wedlock, and further from the exhilarating, chaotic freedom she craved. Every smile in the corridor, every dance in the grand hall felt like a gilded cage, and she longed, itchingly so, to escape into the wild arms of the man who understood her soul more than any bore of silk and satin trappings ever could. Yet, amidst the swirling chaos of her feelings and the plans she mustered to squelch them, a rustling of hope sparked only in the flickering corners of darkness. Alara learned to hone the whispers of her people, catching snippets of courage through the tavern's thin walls, and their talk of rebellion filled her with an odd mix of fear and exhilaration. While the courtiers cringed at the thought of insurrection, Alara found solace in the notion that she wasn't alone. Shadows could flicker with light, after all. The irony bubbled within her. She, the princess, expected to uphold every archaic tradition, now standing on the edge of revolutionary change. Could her love, deemed forbidden and reckless, also be the key to unshackling her people from a tyranny they did not even fully recognize? It was a captivating thought, cloaked in danger, and perhaps welcoming just enough madness to spark the kind of hope they could only sing about in the taverns by firelight. As tensions simmered closer to boiling, Kale rallied the discontented hearts beneath the restless night sky, their fervor crackling with energy like a campfire on the verge of explosion. Footsteps echoed through the alleyways, surrounding him as lanterns flickered, casting ghostly shadows on the walls. Each soul present wore an expression ranging from fierce determination to jittery impatience, but all shared a potent mix of hope and trepidation in their hearts. Kale raised his voice above the din, leading them in a chorus of aspirations that sang louder than any courtly celebration. A symphony of rebellion bound together by faith in their own power, and as they plotted amidst the distant echoes of Alara's impending betrothal, they ignited a flame, one that threatened to consume the weary order like a phoenix ready to rise. And perhaps, just perhaps, change the course of the entire kingdom forever. In the grim shadows of the castle, where whispers danced like phantoms, Alara steeled herself for the encounter of a lifetime. The air was thick with the scent of damp stone and lingering fear, a heady reminder of the rebellion that roared like a wild beast just beyond the castle walls. With each step toward her father's chamber, her heart drummed a rallying cry, louder than any battle hymn sung on the blood-soaked fields. What was a daughter to do when the man she loved was labeled a traitor, and the burdens of the realm hung heavy upon the shoulders of the common folk? It was time for her truth to be heard, a truth hot enough to ignite the slow-burning embers of rebellion into a full-blown inferno. Alara flung open the door, her father sitting beneath a grand tapestry that depicted their family's victories, ironically rich and unscathed in a world where the streets were steeped in turmoil. His eyes, cold as the steel of his sword, flickered with disbelief as she proclaimed her love for Cale, the very embodiment of rebellion. "You dare speak his name in my presence," he bellowed, his voice booming like thunder, echoing off the stone walls with a force that felt as oppressive as a man's boot upon a woman's neck. But there was no retreat. Alara's resolve was as fierce as the stench of battle in the air. "I dare to speak truth, a truth that could lead us to justice if you would but listen." And listen he did, albeit with the unwillingness of a lion forced to take a vegetarian diet. The confrontation ignited a fiery debate, words slashing through the humidity of the room like blades. Alara articulated the frustrations of the starving masses, painting a vivid picture of children too weak to cry, and elders whose bones crumbled under the weight of a cruel famine, all bred from her father's iron-fisted rule. Each phrase she unleashed was a spark. She could almost see the kindling catching in her father's expression, which morphed from wrathful stone to uncertain clay. The irony of choice hung in the air. Could a man who wielded power so ruthlessly choose purpose over pride? As tensions spiraled like an out-of-control roller coaster, the cacophony of their argument stirred the guards outside, whose ears pricked up at the burgeoning insurrection within the very walls meant to guard against it. The clattering of armor and rasping of swords echoed all around, like a herald of imminent chaos. Alara felt the words she had fought to say begin to wrap themselves like ivy around her father's heart, binding their loyalties and loyalties that had once seemed so clear were now dripping with shades of gray. With each protest, she reminded him of the kingdom's starving mouths and tired souls, smiles lost in the shadows of despair, igniting a fire deep within the hall that might yet burn down the walls of oppression. But as is often the case with passionate rebellions, the thrill of truth can summon both support and treachery. Just as her father's resolve wavered, an intruder, a loyalist to the crown, burst forth, shattering the fragile moment with the clamor of betrayal. Swords clashed, and shields bore the scars of dissent as the battle spilled beyond the doorway into the corridors. Chaos erupting like popcorn in a hot pan. Alara found herself caught in the whirlwind of clashing ideals, love and loyalty battling for supremacy. Little did they know that this fierce confrontation was merely the prologue to a saga that would alter the kingdom's fate, tying hearts together across the valleys of discord, forever changing the meaning of rebellion in their world. In the wake of clashing swords and crumbling banners, the kingdom of Eldoria stood at a crossroad, breath held tight in its collective chest. The battlefields, once ablaze with the chaos of men and magic, lay silent, echoing only the distant caws of crows, eager for the aftermath's grim feast. Yet amidst that haunting quietude, two figures emerged from the shadows, their hearts alight with an unquenchable fire. Ilara, the fiery daughter of a disgraced duke, and Kale, the humble blacksmith with calloused hands and a heart of gold, had dared to love in a time when such passions could summon the guillotine. They strolled through the charred remnants of war, hand in hand, transforming the acrid smell of smoke into a sweet scent of hope. Who would have thought a couple, once labeled as enemies by lineage, could create ripples that shimmered with the promise of unity? Not even Jareth, the kingdom's soothsayer, who regarded his crystal ball more like an old lava lamp than a genuine oracle, would have predicted this turn of events. As days turned into weeks, the kingdom began to feel a shift reminiscent of the change in seasons, where winter reluctantly yields to the warmth of spring. Town criers, wearing patches of mismatched fabric as if they'd lost a bet, began spreading tales of Ilara and Kale's undying love. A soap opera that put the best reality shows to shame. The noble lords and the common villagers no longer gazed upon each other with the sneers of contempt, but mingled instead with laughter and shared stories, as if the barriers of class had been bulldozed by the very affection of the star-crossed lovers. Marketplaces brimmed with a new energy, as nobles bartered with peasants, exchanging not just goods, but dreams and aspirations that danced together like leaves in a gentle breeze. The stench of oppression was giving way to the fragrance of possibility. And it was all thanks to two souls who refused to be just another romantic subplot in the kingdom's long history. Yet, even as the kingdom experienced this blossoming of kinship, lurking in the shadows were those who yearned to douse the flames of change. Spies in dark cloaks whispered venomous secrets, hoping to snuff out the sparks of rebellion ignited by Ilara and Kale. They believed that love was a mere illusion, a fleeting shadow with no substance, much like a poorly drawn comic book character that disappears when the artist runs out of ideas. But our dynamic duo, armed with nothing but their resolve and the unorthodox wisdom of a blacksmith's hammer and a noble's heart, prepared to face these foes head-on. They held meetings in candlelit taverns, where the scent of roasted meat mingled with the fervor of revolution, rallying both noble and commoner to unite with their shared dreams. In their minds danced images of a kingdom not ruled by fear, but flourishing in love and mutual regard. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a palette of reds and golds across the sky, Ilara and Kale became the torchbearers of a new era. their love story embraced by bards and ballad singers alike. Local taverns echoed with songs about the blacksmith who stole the heart of a noble, igniting laughter among the young and the old. Their tale transformed into legend, embodying everything Eldoria wished to become: a realm of compassion, acceptance, and resilient dreams. With each note strummed on the lute, the vivid image of a knight and a lady born from opposition became a powerful emblem of hope, transcending the tangled mess of social standings. Immortalized in story and song, they carved their names deep into the annals of Eldoria's history, showing that love, raw, messy, and sometimes ridiculous, could indeed achieve the impossible. Years later, as children played in the sun-kissed meadows where the battle once raged, tales of Alara and Kale flowed like a river through the hearts of every villager and noble. Walls that once divided social classes had crumbled to dust, leaving a landscape rich in thriving culture and cooperation. Generations grew up dreaming not of power or conquest, but of collaboration and kindness, with posters of Alara sporting her renowned battle gear, and Kale wielding a hammer not just for forging metal, but also for building bridges of friendship. Their love had triggered an unexpected revolution, one that didn't require swords, but rather open hearts and open minds. In the kingdom of Eldoria, the whispers of destiny became a roaring anthem, reminding all that even the most forbidden romances could, in time, alter the very course of a nation. In the smoky, dimly lit cellar of a tavern that had seen better days, the air was thick with the scent of spilled wine and heated passion. Revolutionary whispers flitted about like startled pigeons, all while the distant echo of marching feet mingled with the rattle of iron-shod boots on cobblestones. There, in the heart of revolutionary Paris, Julian, paint-stained and wild-eyed, leaned against a wooden beam, clutching his brush like a sword. Then, amidst the roiling sea of fervent voices, he saw her, Camille, her auburn curls framing a face alight with intensity and courage that would put any blockbuster hero to shame. It was a moment that felt frozen in time, as the world dissolved around them, leaving just two souls yearning for something more amidst the chaos of rebellion. Their eyes met, a momentary spark igniting the air between them hotter than a cannon's shot. Laughter danced upon the edges of despair as their banter crackled like static electricity, turning the dusty cellar into a sanctuary of hope. Julian, with his rebel's heart, cracked a joke about needing a good revolution just to keep paint from drying too quickly, while Camille, ever quick-witted, shot back that they might as well paint their masterpieces in the blood-red hues of freedom. Each word they exchanged felt like a brushstroke onto a canvas, an artwork of affection painted in bold strokes against the backdrop of revolution. Yet, beneath that flurry of flirtation, an unyielding tension simmered. Both were wielding secrets sharper than daggers, each with the potential to plunge deep into their hearts. The laughter, however, was a fragile veil covering the storm brewing just beneath the surface. As the meeting wore on, the noise of revolution outside flickered through the tavern like a sinister whisper, reminding everyone that danger loomed just beyond the cracks in the cellar walls. Julian felt his pulse quicken not just from Camille's presence, but from the weight of the discovery he had just made about himself, a revelation as shocking as finding a rat in your baguette. He wasn't just an artist trying to make a name in a world that scorned him. He was also tangled in a web of political dissent and a past that threatened to haunt him like a ghost at a dinner party. Camille, too, was fighting her own demons, dark secrets tied to her family that could turn her very dedication to the revolutionary cause into ashes. Yet, despite the shadows swirling around them like a drunken reveler, their chemistry was undeniable, swirling amidst the tavern's smoke like a heady perfume. They shared impromptu plans of changing the world, their laughter so loud that even the rats paused to listen, perhaps taking notes on how to love or conquer. As they spoke, Julian felt the wild urge to reach out, to capture this fleeting moment like a brushstroke on canvas. But the ghost of his past gripped him tightly, a reminder that love and loyalty often walked a tightrope. Fate, dressed in a ragged tricolor scarf, seemed to mock their hopeful hearts. But in that moment, amid the noise, the wine, and the dreams, they dared to believe in the impossible. If only they could unveil their secrets without laying bare their souls, they might just create a masterpiece worth fighting for. As the evening drew to a close, the scent of gunpowder mingled with the fragrance of cheap wine, signaling that the revolution was far from over. Their gazes locked one last time, an unspoken vow resting between them, electrifying as a summer storm. Their hearts raced in sync, pulsing with the promise of love, yet shackled by fear. Julian felt an urge to kiss her, a bold stroke of passion that could ignite the very revolution they fought for. But the specter of their hidden truths loomed large, warning them against reckless abandon. In that turbulent moment, they stepped into the maelstrom of history, where love and revolution intertwined, their tangled hearts beating as one, yet so dangerously close to unraveling. The heat of summer hung in the air like an uninvited guest, sticky and heavy, as Julian and Camille ducked into the shadowy recesses of an abandoned theater. Their laughter echoed, a mix of nervous energy and undeniable chemistry, painting a vibrant contrast against the backdrop of revolution raging outside. But But beneath the surface of their spirited exchanges festered a secret dark enough to choke the life out of their bond. When Camille finally unveiled her startling lineage, the revelation hit Julian like a bucket of ice water. She was the daughter of a regime official, an architect of the very oppression they both despised. The sweet aroma of lilacs wafting through cracked windows couldn't mask the bitter taste of betrayal swirling in his gut, leaving him shaken and breathless as they stood at the crossroads of love and treachery. Both of them too proud to admit the gravity of the moment. Whispers flitted through the cobblestone streets like timid ghosts, murmuring tales of a spy lurking among the revolutionaries. Each rustle in the shadows sent shivers down Julian's spine, a cacophony of heartbeats and hushed accusations ramping up the tension. Was it paranoia or reality? The line blurred as revelry turned into suspicion, and the warmth of Camille's embrace began to feel like a dangerous gamble. He could detect the faint scent of her perfume, wild jasmine mingled with the metallic tang of worry, and the slightest tremble in her voice sent alarm bells ringing louder than an old-fashioned school bell in an abandoned classroom. Love, once a buoyant dream, suddenly felt like a lead weight, dragging him into a murky sea of doubt and dread. As their secret rendezvous continued, the atmosphere shifted, a bone-chilling frost creeping in where warmth had flourished. Every glance exchanged felt loaded with hidden meanings. Every brushed hand ignited sparks of passion, but also raised questions. How could they trust one another when the world around them was rife with betrayal? The revolution might have united the people in a common cause, but here they were, two lovers marooned in a tempest of suspicion, battling the tide of their emotions. Ironically, they were as entangled as the vines creeping up the old building facade outside. And here Julian sat, lurching between thoughts of romance and treason. Heady stuff, really, but surely not the kind of emotional roller coaster anyone signed up for. His heart raced to the rhythm of a tango, passionate, tumultuous, and decidedly inappropriate given the stakes. With every whispered promise exchanged in the shadows of the theater, the air thickened, charged like static just before a summer storm. Who was the spy? Could it be one of their friends, or perhaps even Camille herself, playing both sides like a masterful puppeteer? As Julian's mind spun webs of suspicion, the flicker of a candlelight caught Camille's eye, and for a moment the world outside dissolved. She reached for his hand, fingers entwining in a way that felt like both a lifeline and a noose. The sensation of her warmth seeped into his skin, igniting memories of happier times, all while the cold, hard truth that love can be as much a weapon as it is a balm lurked just beneath the surface. In a world turned upside down, where loyalty and love danced precariously on a cliff's edge. Julian and Camille found themselves grappling with the very emotions that had once drawn them together. Suddenly, their secret exchanges felt like a futuristic drama, reminiscent of those apocalyptic movies where even the slightest misstep could shatter the fragile balance of hope. Outside, the distant sound of revolutionary fervor bled into the quiet of their escape, serving as a cruel reminder that while love is a battlefield, so too is the fight for freedom. With every heartbeat echoing like a war drum, they faced the everyday truth that sometimes love alone isn't enough to conquer the tumultuous tides of fate. And so they stood, caught between a revolution they believed in and a love that could very well become its undoing. In the dim light of the evening sky, shadows danced like restless spirits over the cobbled streets of the city, a city vibrating with the murmur of rebellion. Amidst this cacophony of dissent, Julian felt a bitter chill creeping into his bones, not from the biting wind, but from the revelation that had just clawed its way into his heart. His childhood friend, Mark, the very boy who once shared secrets and dreams beneath the sprawling boughs of the old sycamore tree, had betrayed him to the authorities. It was as if a scene had been plucked from a grim fairy tale, where the trusted allies turn into sinister foes overnight, and the heroes often met their demise at the hands of those they loved. Julian's heart raced like a rebellious drum as he set off to confront Mark, determined to unearth the truth buried beneath years of friendship. Anger thrumming through him like a relentless tide pushing against the shore. The confrontation was electric, charged with a tension that crackled in the air, a spicy mix of betrayal and unleashed emotions, hotter than a freshly lit firecracker. "How could you, Mark?" Julian yelled, his voice rising above the clamor of distant revolution. Banners waved, and fervent cries erupted like a symphony of discontent. The scent of smoke mingled with the sharp tang of blood in the air, a reminder of the stakes involved. Mark, standing there with his back against a crumbling wall, wore a mask of defiance that felt eerily akin to the tyrants they were fighting against. As the two men exchanged fierce words, the world around them blurred. It was just them, two boys turned men, wrestling with the sins of loyalty and the cruelty of duplicity amidst a brewing storm. The night was thick with urgency as Julian crept through the shadows, the scent of damp earth and smoke lingering in the air like a whispered promise. Each heartbeat thundered in his ears, a metronome signaling his racing desperation to rescue Camille, the woman who had captivated him since their first shared glance. With the revolutionaries rallying behind him, the night felt electric. Every whispered plan crackled with the tension of a coiled spring, ready to unleash chaos upon the fortress. As they approached the imposing stone walls, lit ominously by flickering torchlight, Julian couldn't shake the bitter taste of betrayal. His trusted ally, Mark, was lurking in the darkness, like a bad plot twist in a summer blockbuster, ready to spring his own agenda on the unsuspecting heroes. The fort loomed like a villain in a cartoon, all jagged edges and looming shadows. And inside, the clink of metal echoed like the world's worst percussion section. Guards patrolled with the urgency of over-caffeinated cats, their uniforms crisp, arms crossed like grudges waiting to be fulfilled. The air carried a blend of sweat and the harsh tang of iron. It wrapped around Julian, and for a moment he could almost convince himself that the taste of his own fear was stronger than any scent of defiance. But love, as they say, is a beleaguered general that smells the battlefield and charges ahead. And that was exactly what he did. Together with the revolutionaries, they burst into the fortress, swords drawn, hearts pounding like a symphony of chaos, as walls of stone echoed their determination. Julian's heart raced as he darted through the narrow corridors, every step ringing with the promise of glory, tinged with the sharp edge of doom. Torches sputtered, casting dancing shadows that mocked his every fear. But love sang louder. The soft laughter of Camille echoed in his mind, urging him forward. Suddenly, in a clash of steel and shouts, they met the guards in a frenetic flurry. The air filled with battle cries that sounded like old rock ballads, electrifying the atmosphere with their raw energy. Every parry and thrust felt like a twisted dance, the kind that starts out romantic, but quickly turns into a brawl, giving Julian a burst of adrenaline as he fought not just for freedom, but for the very essence of his heart. Each of his movements was guided by an invisible force, love, simmering with the need to protect what was most precious amidst the chaos of rebellion. Amidst the fray, Julian found himself face to face with Mark, his dagger glinting maliciously under the dim light of the flickering torches. It was as if fate had painted a tragically ironic picture just for him, the betrayal swirling in the air thicker than the scent of iron, and sweat surrounding them. Mark, with a smirk that could curdle milk, taunted Julian, recounting their shared dreams and schemes now twisted into shadows of betrayal. The weight of heartbreak pressed down on Julian should he seek revenge on a man who had once been like a brother. The answer was a moving target, like trying to hit a piñata blindfolded, especially when all he could think of was the warmth of Camille, waiting, desperately needing him to prioritize love over vengeance. In that fleeting moment, Julian felt a clarity he had never known. Love was not just about passion and sweetness. but a persistent courage that defied the darker urges of the soul. As the conflict surged around him, he chose honor over revenge, lowering his sword, heart pounding a tempestuous rhythm. With a fierce resolve, he launched toward the cell where Camille awaited, summoning every fragment of bravery and tenderness he possessed. The bittersweet taste of freedom felt tantalizingly close as he imagined her smile brightening the dim dungeon, a beacon amid the darkness. His hands steadied, and when Julian at last found her, their eyes locked in a promise. This love, forged in battle, would rise above every sorrow, sealing their fate together like a classic tale that refuses to end, despite the odds. Amidst the swirling dust of battle, a tense standoff unfolded between Julian and Mark. Their breaths came in ragged gasps, like the wheezing of some defunct steam engine echoing through the smoldering landscape. Darkness loomed over their souls, yet Julian's resolve shone brighter than a freshly polished sword. With a fierce growl escaping his lips, he lunged forward, fueled by love and a desperate need for freedom, propelling their struggle toward its heart-stopping climax. The crack of fists meeting flesh echoed like a drum roll for revolution, punctuated by Camille's faint cries urging him on, turning the fight into a dramatic dance of fate, where every strike held the weight of their hopes and dreams, as if choreographed by destiny itself. When at last the dust settled, Julian stood victorious, but breathless. Mark sprawled on the ground like a fallen gladiator in a coliseum of emotions. Camille, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and joy, broke free from her constraints, the ropes falling away like the chains of oppression they had both fought against. The scent of burnt gunpowder mingled with the sweetness of freedom lingering in the air, wrapping around them like a well-worn blanket on a chilly night. Their hearts pounded in synchrony, two drumbeats uniting into a thunderous anthem of love and defiance. In that moment, all the horrors they had faced faded into a mere backdrop, eclipsed by the blazing fire ignited in their hearts, a blaze they were determined to fan into an all-consuming revolution. Some might say that love is blind, but Julian and Camille could see clearly now, an unyielding world waiting for them outside the battlegrounds. Hand in hand, they vowed to not just cherish their own fairy tale, but to pen a novel for the world. Theirs was not a story fit for mere romantic exchanges over candlelight. No, it was a manifesto of unwavering courage and bleeding hearts. As they wandered through the debris of their liberating confrontation, the distant sound of drums and fervent cheers painted a canvas of the people's awakening. Nostalgia washed over them, reminiscent of a grand concert, where every chord struck the heartstrings of those yearning for change, echoing with the voices of the many who would join their fight for liberty. But love, as they soon discovered, is not simply an emotional high. It's a muddy, chaotic battlefield of its own. With every step forward, Julian and Camille faced a splintered society still grappling with its own identity, like a teenager trying to figure out what music to play at their first party, mixing anger, hope, and confusion into one heady mixture. Together, they channeled their shared passion into organizing, finding joy in community meetings that sometimes felt like herding cats, or watching a reality show gone wrong. Yet, in the laughter that echoed through the air, alongside passionate debates, they unearthed not just plans for strategy, but a joyful rebellion blossoming within the hearts of those once shackled by despair. Their love became a palette of collective aspirations, as vibrant and chaotic as a Jackson Pollock painting, messy, but undeniably beautiful as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues upon the land. The legacy of Julian and Camille's fiery love affair took root, sprouting in the very soil of the revolution, like a well-timed plot twist in a blockbuster. Their journey inspired the weary and the brave alike, igniting passions in those who had long thought themselves extinguished. They might not have had a cunning plan pulled from a heist movie, but their bond paved the way for an awakening that resonated through time, echoing with the cries of freedom. The whisper of their vows floated on the evening breeze, merging with the resolute chants of the revolutionaries, reminding everyone that love, much like the revolution itself, was worth fighting for. Together they stood, not just as lovers, but as sparks that would stoke the flames of a new beginning, igniting a future as bright as the stars overhead. In the heart of Eldoria, the castle loomed like a grand prison, its stone walls pale against the brilliant blue sky. Inside, Princess Seraphina paced her richly adorned chamber, her gown flowing like a river of silk, but her spirit churned like a tempest. No amount of gold-threaded embroidery could dull the haunting cries of hunger echoing from the market below. She admired her reflection in the lavish mirror, but the image of regal beauty felt like a gilded cage. A princess is not just the crown she wears, she mused, but a voice for the voiceless. With a spark of rebellion igniting her heart, Seraphina donned a simple brown cloak that masked her golden hair, transforming her into just another commoner amidst the bustling market. The air buzzed with the discordant symphony of haggling vendors, the sweet scent of baked bread intermingling with the tang of freshly cut wood. The streets were alive, a kaleidoscope of colors and textures, peasants' tunics stained with labor, the vivid fruits stacked high, and the pungent odor of livestock mingling with the earthy aroma of rain-soaked dirt. As she navigated the crowd, a thrill of freedom bubbled within her, a feeling as intoxicating as the finest Eldorian wine. It was in this lively chaos that she stumbled upon Elias, a handsome carpenter with hands worn but strong, an honest smile that could charm even the grumpiest of tavern owners. He spoke with fervor, gesturing animatedly as he lamented the plight of the working class over the clatter of metal tools and the sweet serenade of birds overhead. "Do you not see? We build their towers while our children go hungry," he exclaimed, his words ringing through Seraphina's ears like a battle cry from a distant land. For the first time, she imagined a world beyond the opulent banquets and luxurious gowns, a world where love and justice could intertwine. Their eyes locked in a moment that felt like the cusp of a revolution, time suspended in the heady air between them. Seraphina felt a spark, a lightning bolt, as she was drawn into the orbit of his sincerity. The gleam of mischief danced in Elias' eyes, reminding her of the fantastical stories of legends that whispered of star-crossed lovers defying the odds. Here was a man who could not only shake her heart, but perhaps the very foundations of her world. How ironic that she, the princess, would find such companionship among the common folk she had watched from afar, dreaming of a vibrant life. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues across the cobblestones, Seraphina knew she had crossed a threshold. Conversations about love and injustice wove together like the intricate tapestries hanging in her chamber. This was not a mere dalliance. It was a fierce awakening, a realization that one common carpenter might hold the key to her destiny and the spirit of the kingdom itself. In that fleeting moment of stolen intimacy, the princess understood that love could forge the mightiest revolution, and perhaps her heart was the most powerful weapon of all. Under the cloak of moonlight, Seraphina and Elias would steal away from their respective worlds, two star-crossed lovers bound by a thread of defiant affection. In the thick, fragrant air, punctuated by the sweet aroma of blooming night jasmine, they found solace in whispers and laughter, a stark contrast to the heavy chains that bound their lives. Each secret meeting was charged with the thrill of rebellion, an electric connection that pulsed between them like a rhythmic drumbeat. Ah, but love has a way of enchanting the heart and blinding reason. As they spun tales of future kingdoms, far removed from the oppressive shadows cast by the crown, they were not just a noblewoman and a commoner. They were two dreamers crafting a world where the heart spoke louder than birthright, like Cinderella and her prince, just without the glass slipper, and thankfully without the mice. Yet, as with all good things dipped in honey, bitterness soon crept upon their sweetness like a jealous adder. The advisor, an oily man with more schemes than a frenzied bard at a tavern, began to notice Seraphina's frequent disappearances. His eyes, glinting like a raven's in a graveyard, hungrily searched for the buried secrets, knowing that, like a cat with a mouse, he had no intention of letting his prey slip away. Tension brewed in the air, thick and suffocating, as if the gods themselves were holding their breaths, waiting for the inevitable clash of secrets and ambitions. And just when they thought they could swirl in their own reverie, the annual festival loomed ahead, a grand event bursting with laughter, music, and the very real threat of exposure. It was both a celebration and a danger, a roaring bonfire that could easily ignite their hidden love into an inferno of scandal. As drums echoed through the cobbled streets, signaling a festive spirit, shadows danced with the flickering candlelight, where laughter and joy masked the underlying unrest of the commoners. Elias carefully maneuvered through a throng of celebrating villagers. The sweet scent of freshly baked bread mixed with sweat, and the tang of ale wrapping around him like an unwelcome embrace. Everywhere he turned, conversations dripped with whispers of discontent, of poverty drowning in royal surplus, and of a growing fire in the hearts of those who had suffered for far too long. It felt as if the very earth beneath his feet was rumbling, a subtle undercurrent that promised a general uprising, potentially sweeping away the gilded fantasies of the court. And amidst it all, he scanned each face, longing to catch sight of Seraphina, his heart a flurrying bird trapped in a cage of anxiety. Would she stand at the edge of the crowd, a fleeting vision clad in moonlight? Or was she still trapped behind layers of expectations? Seraphina, too, felt the weight of the storm brewing on the horizon, her heart caught in a tumult of emotions. Dressed in splashes of vibrant hues that made her glow like the dawn itself, she carried the grace of a goddess with the burden of the world on her shoulders. As she danced at the festival, the laughter of her peers chimed like bells, whimsical and joyous. Yet, each note struck a painful reminder of the rift between her heart's desire and her duty to the crown. She felt the golden crown atop her head biting into her brow, a stark contrast to the warmth she craved in Elia's embrace. The irony was palpable, like a bad rom-com without the happy ending. The commoner was the one who truly understood her, while the court tried to suffocate her with expectations wrapped in silk and lace. It became increasingly clear that love, in all its rebellious glory, would not thrive in silence. As the festival reached its climax, the electric energy buzzed around them, urging Seraphina and Elias toward a life-altering decision, and the inevitable face-off against the very structures that sought to keep them apart. Like two magnets drawn together, they had to choose either remain hidden in the dark, wishing for a simple solution, or stand up amidst the roaring tides of change, bearing their souls to a kingdom that might just be on the brink of revolution. With the scent of rebellion thick in the air, they felt a pulse of hope propelling them forward, a buzz akin to 1,000 parties happening at once, mixed with the adrenaline of risk and the thrill of unknown possibilities. Their hearts raced, each pulse a call to arms, dancing on the fringes of hearth and hunger, love and war, as they prepared to make their stand against fate itself. In the grand halls of Castle Greywind, the air grew thick with the scent of roasted boar and sweet wine, as the monarch prepared to announce his latest folly, an extravagant celebration funded by none other than the common folk. King Reginald, with his golden crown perched like a spotlight on his head, declared with exaggerated flair that the kingdom's treasury would be weighed down with opulence. But unbeknownst to him, a different kind of spark ignited among the townsfolk, led by none other than Elias, a rugged carpenter with a fiery passion for justice. The moment he heard of the crown's plans, he felt like he'd just bitten into a sour apple, nasty and full of surprises. With every rise of the sun, his resolve only deepened, his eyes smoldering with a resolve that could rival a blacksmith's forge, as he gathered like-minded souls for a protest against the king's greed and folly. Seraphina, the king's own daughter, waged her silent war within the gilded prison of her royal existence. Every lavish gown, every sparkling pendant felt like chains more constricting than those of her commoners. Heart pounding like a drum in a battle march, she wrestled with memories of Elias' passionate speeches, igniting the flames of rebellion in her very soul. With her heart trapped between the crown's cold promises and the warmth of Elias' fierce ideals, she chose the latter, secretly slipping out of her chamber, adorned in a simple tunic. Underneath the moon's glow, she found him, and together they hatched a plan that felt like a daring escape from a medieval rom-com, where the princess and her rugged hero battled against an unsuspecting antagonist, her own family. As shadows lengthened, so too did the gathering storm of rebellion among the commoners, where laughter and shouts mingled like a raucous tavern brawl. With banners made from old sheets and makeshift drums that echoed like thunder, Elias and Seraphina united the people, tapping into their frustrations over unjust taxes and empty bellies. The scent of sweat mingled with wood smoke, as their rallying cries stirred the crowd into a frenzy, igniting a revolutionary spirit that crackled in the air like a summer storm. Seraphina, cloaked in anonymity, wiped her brow as her heart swelled with pride. Every cheer from the crowd felt like a note in a symphony of defiance, a chorus harmonizing against tyranny. But the harder they fought, the more perilous their path became. As whispers of the royal family's fury slithered through the ranks, like a dark serpent seeking its prey, then, like a scene from a tragic opera, the mask of secrecy slipped, and the truth emerged from its hiding place. The revelation of Seraphina's royal bloodline hit the crowd like a cold bucket of water, and shock electrified the air, slicing through the camaraderie like a hot knife through butter. As dawn broke over the kingdom, the air crackled with tension, charged like a static-filled room before a thunderstorm. Commoners, ragged and resolute, surged toward the castle like a river breaking through a dam, their cries for justice echoing against the stone walls. The smell of sweat and hope wafted through the streets, mingling with the faint aroma of freshly baked bread from a nearby bakery. Utterly oblivious to the chaos brewing just beyond its threshold, with every clash of feet on cobblestone, an army of souls marched, united under banners of change, fearlessly buoyed by dreams of a better life, a life where bread was not just a luxury for the privileged few. Little did they know, inside the towering castle, a storm of a different nature was brewing as well, spearheaded by none other than Seraphina, the king's own daughter, who prepared to defy her lineage for the sake of her people. Seraphina stood tall, her heart pounding like a war drum, as she listened to the thunderous chants of her people. Clad in a simple gown that belied her royal status, she felt the weight of their hopes resting on her shoulders, like a crown made not of jewels, but of longing and desperation. I may be a princess, but today I choose to be their voice rather than a figurehead, she declared, her voice ringing clear above the din. It was an ironic twist. The daughter of the tyrant, now leading a charge against tyranny, like a reluctant hero cast into a movie where she never even read the script. The crowd, feeling the surge of her defiance, erupted in cheers, a cacophony of strength and sorrow, drowning out the distant clanging of guards preparing for battle, their armor clanking like the ominous soundtrack of an impending conflict. Meanwhile, Elias, undeterred by the impending chaos, tossed aside his fears and rallied the commoners with a fervor that could ignite stars. With a voice like thunder and eyes that burned with passion, he wielded words sharper than swords, urging his comrades to stand firm. Each shout rang out with the resolve of 1,000 hearts, and for every command he issued, the crowd surged forward like waves, crashing against a rocky shore. But the king was not about to let an uprising spoil his royal breakfast, and in an office lined with plush fabrics and gold leaf, he bellowed orders like a cartoon villain twisting his mustache. Guards trampled through the pristine halls, brandishing swords that glinted threateningly in the sunlight. Unaware that their sharp metal could no longer intimidate the iron was forming outside the castle gates. As the dust and fear mingled in the air, the convergence of commoners and soldiers led to a dramatic standoff. The walls of the castle echoing with tension so thick it could be sliced with a dull butter knife. Seraphina, her heart skipping like a mischievous child, broke through the ranks to confront her father. The king himself, a man whose face grew redder than a ripe tomato, his fury palpable like the stench of old armor. She channeled every ounce of love and courage into that moment, pleading for peace, her voice trembling yet fierce, proclaiming, "I would rather be a commoner advocating for justice than a princess upholding your cruel reign." The irony was not lost on the crowd. Their savior was a royal who had taken an impassioned leap from opulence into the trenches of struggle. And they buzzed with hope, hanging on her every word like bees on honey. The king, irate, found himself at an impasse, a daughter's heart against a throne's weight. And if looks could kill, his glare would have felled armies. But in that moment, as sparks of rebellion flickered in the air like fireflies on a summer night, something extraordinary began to happen. The shouts of the commoners melded with Seraphina's assertive pleas, creating a melody so powerful that even the most hardened guards hesitated, caught in the spell of shared humanity. The battle for change was no longer just a clash of swords, but a symphony of voices echoing through time, reminiscent of ancient tales of freedom and love. Seraphina stepped back, her heart throbbing in her throat, catching her breath amid the chaos, aware that today they might win more than just a battle. They could change the very fabric of their kingdom forever. As laughter broke through the tension and the unexpected emerged from the chaos, it was clear. The crown had been challenged, and the path to a new dawn shimmered enticingly on the horizon, where love and courage intertwined like a tether, weaving a future no one ever thought possible. As the dust settled and the echoes of revolution faded into the wind, a peculiar stillness settled over the kingdom of Eldoria. The air, once thick with the acrid smell of smoke and the roars of rebellion, now held a surprising sweetness, like a fresh start waiting to burst forth. King Alastair, with his crown slightly askew, as if pondering the weight of his decisions, begrudgingly summoned his advisers. Reluctant yet aware that the times were changing like a wind-swept banner, it was hard to miss the irony that the very people he once dismissed now stood on the brink of reshaping his legacy. Much like an abstract artist trying to figure out why his paintbrush had gone rogue. Meanwhile, the whispers of a new dawn resounded through the alleys, street vendors cackling nervously about the peculiar couple taking the stage. a crown bearer, and a commoner, frantically trying not to lose their footing in the shifting sands of history. Seraphina and Elias, standing shoulder to shoulder as the unlikely heroes of the realm, felt the electricity of change buzzing around them, a spark akin to the moment when you find a fresh pair of socks in the laundry. They had traded the shadows of secrecy for a stage illuminated by torches flickering in the early evening twilight. Their love emboldened by the transformation surrounding them, standing before all, Seraphina, with grace reminiscent of a dancer caught in the wind, pointed towards the dusty skies, calling for unity and justice, her voice cutting through the lingering uncertainty like a knife through warm butter. Meanwhile, Elias admired her brilliance, his heart thumping harder than the bass at a royal party cranked to 11. As laughter bubbled up from the crowd, Seraphina's florid hopes seemed to dance among them, whispering the promise of a kingdom where poverty and privilege could no longer cohabit like awkward housemates forced to share an apartment. Eldoria began to transform before their very eyes, a tapestry woven from the threads of old grudges and fresh commitments. The scent of blooming jasmine filled the air as villagers stepped out from their neglected corners, emboldened by the new possibility of equality. Farmers chuckled over their crops. Bakers tossed their flour about with renewed joy. And even the grumpy blacksmith could be heard humming a tune that hadn't echoed in his forge for years. Each passing day felt like a page torn from an epic novel, where characters usually pined for love began rallying for change, thirsting for a future in which their voices nested securely among the lofty echoes of royalty. As Seraphina and Elias ventured through the cobbled streets, hand in hand, their presence fused the air with vibrant possibility, as if they were living proof that the chasm between noble and peasant was about to become a mere pothole to be crossed with courage and perhaps a touch of humor. Of course, not everyone was clapping with glee. Some grumbled like a cat stepped on its tail, convinced change might cramp their style. The royals, once safe behind silken curtains, now stared wide-eyed as their power-hungry peers tried to grasp at the ebbing tide of supremacy. The kitchens, where once the delicious aroma of roast duck danced in the air, began to smell of spit and grumbling stomachs, as the traditionalists bickered over slow-pickled peaches and perilous futures, as revolutionaries armed with pitchforks morphed into advocates wielding pamphlets. Seraphina and Elias understood that the fight for equality often came with a side of growing pains, and perhaps a sprinkle of chaos reminiscent of a slapstick comedy. Yet when laughter echoed in those corners once ruled by fear and anger, it became evident that the tide of revolution had birthed not only a new era, but also a new family dynamic altogether, complete with slightly awkward family dinners and unspoken rules of engagement between the crown and their subjects. As seasons shifted and Eldoria's roots took hold in the fertile ground of reform, Seraphina and Elias began to feel the comforting weight of belonging settle upon their shoulders, no longer just two figures from disparate worlds, colliding like characters from a rom-com. They were now a symbol of the powerful union that could reshape the horizon. With winter snugly creeping upon them, the snows that fell were not just a shroud over the old, but a fresh quilt of hope draped over their nation. Radiant and shimmering under a brilliant moonlit night, celebrations erupted their love story, a call to arms, a banner waving proudly where once was only bitter division. As the stars twinkled overhead, Seraphina and Elias embraced a future together, two hearts bound by the courage of a revolution, forging a delicate tapestry of hope that promised Eldoria would never again be the same. Picture, if you will, the marketplace of Eloria, a vibrant symphony of colors and sounds that could awaken even the most stoic hearts. Vendors shouted blessings over their heaped mounds of spices, the air thick with scents of cinnamon and cardamom dancing around the sweet notes of freshly blossomed lilies. The crowd bustled like a hive of bees, while gulls squabbled overhead, crafting their own chaotic melody. Amidst this picturesque chaos stood Lysandra, her paint-smeared apron a badge of honor, gazing wistfully at a nearby canvas as if it held all her dreams. That day, fate had a rendezvous planned, and unbeknownst to her, a nobleman was to wander into her world like a character from a grand tale, smelling more of privilege than of the market spices, crowned instead with the dull gleam of expectations. Enter Selim, a man carved from the very stone of nobility, with a jaw that could cut through the thickest of misunderstandings, and a gaze that seemed to absorb the world around him like a sponge in a rainstorm. As he maneuvered through the throngs of merchants and townsfolk, a curious spark ignited when his eyes met Lysandra's. Their connection was immediate, an electric current that shouted, "Who cares about family lines and social allegiances?" They began a lively exchange about the nature of art, his posh theories, colliding with her fierce passion, like two rival chefs arguing over the best way to season a pot roast. And amid spices and flowers, they began sketching the blueprint of a friendship that held the promise of something infinitely more profound, if only the world would permit it. Ah, but irony is a tricky beast, isn't it? While Lysandra's heart painted dreams upon the canvas of the unknown, the weight of their disparate lives tugged at the edges of her joy. Much like an annoying mosquito buzzing right before you're about to drift into sleep, Here was a nobleman who was cherished for his lineage, discussing the quiet beauty of an artist's soul. Yet deeply embedded in him was the unyielding shackle of expectation. The laughter they shared, so rich and genuine, was pricked by the reality of societal expectations, where she was but a humble artist weaving dreams from air and paint, and he, a scion of a family with noble blood dancing with the ghosts of duty and power. Their laughter, while sweet, was marred by the echo of royal obligations looming over them like a sword of Damocles. As the days wore on, the market became their secret sanctuary, where every stolen glance and whispered word was laden with unexpressed longing. Arcing the chasm between their worlds, they spoke of dreams that soared higher than the empire's grand towers, feeling like rebels in a castle under siege, plotting to overturn the norms that dictated love and friendship should bow before rank. The townsfolk, of course, were already beginning to gossip, their sharp tongues whispering about a noble lad being more than a bit too interested in a common artist, teasing that perhaps Selim could do better than a paint-slinging poetess. Yet, to the young couple, the market's chaotic orchestra seemed to play a serenade just for them, an anthem of rebellion against a world that demanded they remain apart, making their moments together taste even sweeter. But as destiny would have it, the winds of change are often accompanied by storm clouds. With every laughter-laden moment they shared, the lurking shadows of bloodlines and status threatened to unravel the very tapestry of their connection. Would their budding friendship survive the unraveling tensions of their social circles? Or would they have to choose between their hearts and the relentless expectations of clan politics? It was in this precarious balance that their story began to unfold, a tale woven with stubborn resolve and ignited passions, a love story not just between two souls, but one destined to spark an era of change. The original Romeo and Juliet minus the poison, but with all the added spices of life. In the twilight shadows of Eloria, Lysandra and Selim reveled in their secret meetings beneath the ancient oak tree, its gnarled branches a silent witness to their blossoming affection. Every stolen moment felt electric, like a spark flying off a flint rock, igniting their souls in a world where such flames were frowned upon. The crisp night air carried the scent of blooming night jasmine, mingling with the pungent odor of damp earth as the couple whispered sweet nothings, punctuated by nervous laughter that echoed through the oppressive silence of expectation. Their hands intertwined like twining vines, each caress sending shivers down their spines. They knew the thrill of infatuation, but the stakes were higher than a childhood game of hide-and-seek. They were playing with fire in a kingdom poised on the brink of chaos. Who could have guessed that a mere romance could set off ripples destined to crash against the shores of a nation's fate, creating waves as unfathomable as the ocean's depths itself? Yet in Illyria, whispers had a life of their own, swirling like autumn leaves caught in a gusty storm. The gossipers, armed with sharp tongues and sharper eyes, prowled the bustling marketplace, noses twitching at the slightest hint, an exchanged glance, a fleeting smile. With each sly murmur, Lysandra's cheeks flushed a deep crimson, and Selim's brow furrowed with the weight of the world, as if insiders were scrutinizing them through magnifying glasses, looking for fault lines in their carefully constructed bubble of romance. The clinking of coins and the haggling voices around them faded into mere background noise, each syllable of scandal echoing louder than a singer out of key at a tavern's open mic night. And with every volatile turn of the political tide, the heat rose not just from the brewing conflict over Illyria's governance, but also from the fervor of their hidden love, a dangerous concoction brewing against the backdrop of an intoxicating era of strife. As the sun dipped beyond the horizon, casting a burnt orange glow that radiated like the flames of rebellion, Lysandra and Selim found themselves grappling with more than just their hearts. Tensions crackled like dry twigs underfoot. Each step they took on this path felt precarious, and they navigated the intricate maze of alliances and rivalries with an awkwardness that could rival that of a toddler learning to walk. Each meeting became a high-stakes chess game played against unseen opponents, where a misstep could lead to checkmate. Silken whispers of betrayal and ambition coiled around them like a poisonous vine, while the intoxicating allure of their connection urged them forward, daring them to risk it all for the sake of love. It was a delicate dance, choreographed by fate, where even the slightest miscalculation could shatter their fragile world, leaving them as vulnerable as a canvas in a rainstorm. With every heartbeat and hurried breath, the weight of their station pressed upon them, as tangible as the glow of a hearth fire inside a dimly lit hall. Lysandra's spirit danced with defiance, while her mind spun webs of worry. She was the daughter of a noble and Selim, a rising star among the merchant class, each one riding the cusp of change like a surfer chasing the perfect wave. Yet amidst the scent of fresh bread from the bakery nearby, and the distant sounds of a fiddler tuning his instrument, they clung to their dreams like desperate tightrope walkers at the circus, balancing between ambition and love. It was an irony as rich as the thick cream in a forbidden dessert. The very systems striving to keep them apart were beginning to crumble under the weight of inequality and discontent. They laughed at the absurdity of it all, realizing their romance could be the very spark that ignited a revolution, or a cataclysmic monsoon that swept them away into oblivion. As the events around them escalated and the power players laid their cards on the table, Lysandra and Selim's adventure became a heady mix of danger and exhilaration. The grounds of Eloria shook not just with the anxieties of a populace in turmoil, but with the whispered promises shared between them, each secret rendezvous a conspiratorial act in a world that thrived on speculation. They were the star-crossed lovers at the center of an unexpected tempest, caught between duty and desire, a Shakespearean twist set against the vibrant backdrop of a brewing conflict. Those hidden glances and stolen kisses had grown into a fervent blaze. They could taste the bittersweet tension in the air, like sharp citrus mingling with the richness of dark chocolate, awakening their senses to a new reality. Together, they held the power to become revolutionaries, leading a charge not just for their love, but for the very heart of Eloria itself. And somehow, amidst the swirling chaos, it felt wonderfully, terrifyingly possible. In the heart of the bustling city, where the aroma of fresh bread mingled with the sharp tang of sweat and worry, the political landscape twisted like a pretzel, left too long in the oven. Factions erupted like popcorn in a hot kettle, clashing in shadows of market stalls and echoing through the crowded streets. Each group, vying for power, proclaimed their cause with fervor, leaving citizens caught in the crossfire. Selim, burdened by the stubborn legacy of his family, stood amidst the chaos, a reluctant pawn in a game of wealth and influence, with the gilded cage of an arranged marriage looming ever closer. His heart throbbed not for gold, but for Lysandra, an artist with paint-splattered hands and dreams dancing like flames, flickering against the suffocating darkness of his lineage's expectations. Meanwhile, in the dim light of her studio, surrounded by canvases yearning for color, Lysandra felt the tremors of her community's pride, an intoxicating blend of tradition and defiance. They celebrated the stories spun from the rich tapestry of their heritage, urging her to let her creativity blossom, even as the world outside grew increasingly hostile. The scent of turpentine hung thick in the air, a sharp reminder that her art was not merely a pastime, but a vibrant lifeline feeding the restless spirit of her people. Yet the voices of her neighbors mingled with doubts, reverberating louder than the brushstrokes clamoring for freedom. Marry for art, not power, they urged, their fervency as vivid as the colors on Lysandra's palette, the irony of her plight as rich as the oil paints that blurred the lines of her canvas. As tensions mounted, Selim and Lysandra's love blossomed in the shadows, frequent rendezvous by candlelight, where whispered dreams momentarily drowned out the clamoring chaos of their realities. Love can be a reckless car, speeding through the darkest of alleys, and it certainly wasn't braking for the potholes of family feuds and societal pressure. With every shared laugh, they crafted their own revolution, even as the city rumbled with unrest like a giant's stomach after a bad feast. Outside, the protesters chanted, their furious voices cutting through the night like a rebellious anthem, reminding both lovers that their romance, too, could become a powerful statement against the crumbling foundations beneath them. If they faltered at the brink of change, they risked being swept along in the tide, lost in the flood of history's relentless wave. The stakes were high, and as both families began to converge on their worlds, like two competing grocery lists clashing over the last avocado, Selim felt the weight resting heavily on his shoulders. Wealth and power beckoned, golden promises dangling like the last slice of cake at a birthday party, while reminders of his dreams at the hands of the scent of freshly painted canvas tugged at his heart. Lysandra, with her unyielding spirit, refused to be reduced to mere product in a political transaction. Her art pulsed with a heartbeat all its own, each brushstroke a proclamation against the conformity closing in around them. But as shadows deepened and cries of despair echoed through the streets, they knew the battle was not merely for love. It was for a future where their voices could still resonate, like David and Goliath. Should they choose to rise together, they might just craft a new narrative, one where love and beauty were more powerful than the cold grip of currency and influence. However, as the city's pulse quickened and the rumble of unrest loomed threateningly close, it became increasingly clear that both families would stop at nothing to thwart their union, sort of like that one relative who brings unwanted fruitcake to every holiday gathering. The lovers exchanged glances that spoke volumes, a mixture of defiance, fear, and resolute courage igniting in their veins like the bright spark of fireworks on a summer's night. The outdoors could practically smell the anticipation, the very air electric with possibility. Yet, the tides of change were relentless, and no romantic notion could shield them from the turbulent storm brewing on the horizon. As the heart of the city beat louder, Selim and Lysandra stood at the precipice, gazing into the dark abyss, knowing all too well that their love was about to be tested in ways they had never imagined, and they would need to either rise together or be swept away by the crumbling foundations of their world. The air was thick with festivity, a vibrant tapestry of laughter, chatter, and the tantalizing aroma of roasted meats and sweet pastries that danced around the town square. Selim and Lysandra stood hand in hand, their eyes locked like arrows aimed at destiny. It was the annual Unity Festival, or as the locals hilariously dubbed it, Sycophants in Spandex Day, where everyone pretended to enjoy their overlord's benevolence. But today felt different. The heartbeat of the crowd was electric, drumming with unspoken yearning for something greater than cheap beer and stale bread. As they stepped onto the makeshift stage, the crowd hushed, and even the distant sounds of a juggler's misstep fell silent, anticipating the wild chaos about to unfold. With hearts pounding like drums, Selim and Lysandra's voices soared above the whispering winds, declaring their love for each other with a wild abandon that could only be compared to a rebel yell in a superhero movie. We declare our affection not just for each other, but for the freedom of our people. Selim shouted, his voice a rich baritone that resonated against the building walls. Laughter sparkled in some eyes, while others blinked in disbelief, as if they'd just bitten into a lemon instead of the candied apples they had been snacking on. Irony dripped like honey as Lysandra's arrow-straight gaze pierced through the complacency of the crowd. It was the authority of love confronting the tyranny of silence, a bold defiance, as hilarious as it was inspiring. As their declaration echoed through the square, a gust of wind swept through, stirring up dust and carrying the fervor of change like a feisty dance partner. People murmured, glancing at one another, eyes wide, hearts fluttering in a cacophony only matched by the cacophony of drums that heralded revolution. It was as if every heart in the square had synchronized into a single pulse, igniting a spark of rebellion in the mundane lives they had led. The movement wasn't just about Selim and Lysandra anymore. It became a collective roar, a bonfire of hopes and dreams that sent shadows of oppression scurrying like cockroaches when the lights come on. And while some might have thought they were witnessing a theatrical ploy worthy of a Shakespearean play, the reality was raw, real, and utterly intoxicating. Yet, amidst the glimmering promises of passionate freedom, a bittersweet taste lingered like old wine on the tongue. In the throes of their newfound courage, Selim and Lysandra confronted the looming specter of sacrifice, a ghostly figure that whispered temptations of caution and retreat. They could lose it all, their lives, their love, their relentless desire for a tomorrow where chains no longer clinked like the annoying bells of a jester's cap. The laughter of the crowd, once exhilarating, now echoed in their minds as a warning. In that moment, it struck like a stray lightning bolt. Where shadows lurked, true love was akin to a Disney fairy tale, delightful in theory, but harsh under the glare of reality. With the fervor of thousands behind them, the two lovers stood at a crossroads, their fingers entwined tighter than ever, ready to embrace the uncertain path ahead. clangor of pots and pans from celebratory kitchens became a symphony of support, rising and falling in waves, with every warrior shout from the people, just like that beloved character who steps into the superhero suit. They knew they were about to sacrifice their normal lives for the greater good. Whether or not they'd need capes remained to be seen. The crowd surged around them, a sea of faces ready to march together into the cool night, hearts alight with dreams of change. All they had to do was take that leap of faith, for sometimes the most dangerous choice was the most beautiful one, a choice for freedom. As dawn broke over Eloria, its streets brimmed with a renewed energy, a vibrant pulse echoing the hopeful chants of its citizens. The air smelled of fresh bread mingled with the earthy scent of dew-kissed grass. As men and women gathered, faces lit with a mixture of determination and excitement. This was no ordinary morning. This was the sunrise of change. Like the opening scene of a blockbuster film where the heroes prepare for battle, the townsfolk stood shoulder to shoulder, bolstered by a shared purpose that could rival a pep rally. And in the heart of it all, Selim and Lysandra emerged, their love story as compelling as a Shakespearean twist, promising to stir hearts and inspire revolutions across every cobblestone alleyway of Eloria. With every rallying cry, the community ignited a spark of rebellion, akin to that classic moment when Spider-Man finally decides to embrace his powers. Selim and Lysandra, now not just entwined lovers, but fierce advocates for equality, navigated the crowd like seasoned leaders stepping into uncharted waters. Their laughter rang out above the din, a bold defiance against the society that once sought to cage their love within suffocating norms. They spoke passionately about justice, their voices rising and cascading like waves, crashing against the shore, echoing dreams of a society where every individual could stand tall without fear of judgment. The crowd felt the heat of their words, the scent of fervor thick in the air, breathing life into the idea that perhaps, just perhaps, the world could be different. As days melted into weeks, the movement gained momentum, drawing in supporters eager to challenge the status quo. The taunting laughter of those who dared to scoff at dreams of equality faded into the background, replaced by the rhythmic thrum of change. It was a whirlwind of emotions. You could practically taste the adrenaline and stubborn hope wafting through the air like popcorn at a summer fair. People began to embrace their own unique identities, shedding the heavy cloaks of societal expectations that had suffocated them for far too long. Everyone, from the starry-eyed children learning about justice to the elders recounting tales of yesteryear, joined in, creating a cacophony of voices that resonated through every heart and home morphing passion into action. Amidst the whirlwind of reform, there were moments of levity that peppered the serious atmosphere with joy. At one particularly raucous meeting, a child shouted, "Why can't we just have a party instead of a protest?" sparking a laughter that broke the tension like a sledgehammer through a wall. Even the sternest of elders couldn't help but chuckle, their gnarled hands intertwined in a show of solidarity as they recounted humorous tales of their own rebellious youth. Such moments reminded everyone that the fight for justice should not only be fierce, but also joyful, a celebration of unity amidst adversity. With vibrant banners fluttering like wild flags in a windstorm, Eloria transformed from a town shrouded in shadows to a canvas splashed with colors of hope, each face beaming with a sense of belonging and purpose. Finally, the day arrived when change whispered through the halls of power, an undeniable echo of love's triumphant march toward justice. Selim and Lysandra stood at the forefront, both tired and exhilarated, their hearts as full as the moon shining brightly above. They had not merely sparked a movement, they had ignited a revolution that pushed the boundaries of love and acceptance, sending ripples beyond the borders of Eloria. Here, in this moment, with allies gathered like the Avengers ready for battle, they felt the undeniable force of the community's spirit, a wave of humanity pushing them toward a brighter horizon, with laughter still lingering in the air and the taste of possibility booming like a drum roll. The promise of a new era was more than just an aspiration. It was a shared reality, birthed from their bravery and belief in a world where love reigned supreme.